boxer. People speaking very positively about him, but Chairman Mike Rogers, now we have more information about some evidence of him sort of dropping out of society, as it were. Information after he comes back from foreign travel, postings on his YouTube account and other social media indicating that he'd had exposure to elements, whether that's connected to Chechnya and the struggles there against Russia or otherwise. What do you know this morning, and what do you want to know?
Yeah, well, it's important to understand why, in fact, the FBI interviewed him in the first place. So they had information from a foreign intelligence service that they were concerned about his possible radicalization. And so they went from there. The FBI did their due diligence and did a very thorough job about trying to run that to ground. And then asked some more help from that intelligence service to try to get further clarification. And unfortunately, that intelligence service stopped cooperating. So what happens is that case gets closed down. He, we believe, may have actually traveled on an alias to get back to his home country. And that 7 months, 6.5 months or so becomes extremely important. So you know he had some radicalization before he left. You know that he didn't probably travel on his own name or some variation of his own name. And when he comes back, he has a renewed interest in that radicalization belief process. So he's very devout. We know he was very religious and devout and very active in the Boston Islamic Society and a devout attender of prayers in mosque on Fridays. So you see something happening, and you can see it happening after that travel. And so that 6.5 months becomes incredibly important. And it would lead one to believe that that's probably where he got that final radicalization to push him to commit acts of violence, and where he may have received training on what we ultimately saw last Monday.
As I get Mike Leiter and Mike Chertoff into this, we heard from their uncle yesterday on the Today program, and he talked about a change that he noticed in Tamerlan once he returned from that travel. Let me play a portion of that.
I saw what happened to the last time I spoke with Tamerlan in 2009, and I was shocked when I heard his words, his phrases. When he started talking, every other word, he starts sticking in words of God. Devotion, it wasn't devotion. It was something, as it's called, being radicalized.
Important to you, Mike Leiter?
I think very important. A lot of people think this is an atypical story involving people who've lived here for a long time, are very stable, and then become radicalized. And regrettably, it isn't. In the Times Square bombing, we had a case where someone had lived here for 13 years, had an MBA, had worked for an American company, and then tried to bomb Times Square. The challenge here, David, is that there are lots and lots of people who go through these crises and become more radicalized, but very, very few of them actually become mobilized and become terrorists. And that's an incredibly hard piece for the FBI and others.
And you're speaking, Mike Chertoff, to one of the big elements here this morning, and that is, did the FBI miss something? They were on him, Tamerlan that is. They talked to him. They tracked his digital footprint. Chairman Rogers talking about him then traveling on an alias, which I had not heard before. So the red flag is up, but then they closed the books on him because after they took a look at him, they determined there's no threat here.
I think that is going to be a big question, David, and I'd go further than that and say if they had an indication of interest by a foreign service and a connection to an overseas group in Chechnya or in the North Caucasus, you would have wanted to have our foreign intelligence capabilities focused on him. So I think as they look back over this episode, they're going to want to make sure that a ball wasn't dropped either domestically or overseas.
Mike Leiter, you concerned about that?
It's not clear to me that the reporting to the FBI actually said he was associated with a terrorist group. That he might have been radicalized, but that's really very different and might raise a, if not maybe a yellow flag, but I don't think a red flag to the FBI.
Chairman Rogers, you've been an FBI agent. You're now chair of the Intelligence Committee. Was something missed here?
Well, we looked at and talked about what exactly the FBI did, and it's important to note that that case was closed prior to his travel. Yep. So I don't think they missed anything. If you looked at their digital footprint, and they did, if they went through all their database checks, and they did, and you did the thorough interviews that you would expect them to do in a case like this, they did. And at some point, they asked, is there more clarifying information, and never received that clarifying information. At some point, they have nothing. And so you can't ask them to do something with nothing. I think they prudently said, well, there's nothing to see here at this point. Now remember, He then left and traveled and came back. Now, that's a different place. They had no further information indicating that until, of course, after the event itself.
And it's important to point out...
We'll go through and review all that. That's important to do. But I think they were very prudent and very thorough by my review of what happened prior to his travel.
Pete Williams, it's important to underscore what was underscored to me by intelligence officials and federal officials in the last couple of days. We're talking about what they call American persons. The younger brother is a citizen. The older brother was a legal permanent resident. There are limits to what federal law enforcement and intelligence can do with American citizens in terms of tracking them, which leads to this other point, which is Jahar, now hospitalized, survived. He's an American citizen, naturalized 9/11 of last year. Should he be given Miranda rights? Should he be treated as an enemy combatant? That debate has started. Tell me the facts first of what they'll do.
Well, this administration has made a policy decision here. First, that's number one. Secondly, he cannot be tried as an enemy combatant in a military tribunal because that law was changed by the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012 that says you can't do that to an American citizen. Mm-hmm. What some advocates, Republicans are saying, such as Lindsey Graham, are, we understand they say, we understand he's going to be tried in civilian court, but start the questioning, treat him as a combatant under the law of war, question him by intelligence people, get all the intel you can, then turn him over to the civilian authorities. That's what they advocate. That's not going to happen, the administration has decided. He'll be questioned first by this special group that's been set up in the last couple of years in terror cases called the High Value Detainee Interrogation Group, FBI, CIA, DOD. They will question him without giving him his Miranda warning. They don't have a long time to do that, probably no more than maybe a day or so. Then he'll be given his Miranda warning, and we'll see if he continues to talk. In other terrorism cases, surprisingly, these people do keep talking.
Mike Rogers, Chairman, do you have a view about how he should be treated in the criminal justice system, or should he be an enemy combatant?
Well, he's a citizen of the United States. I think that brings all of the protections of the U.S. Constitution. Under the public safety exception, however, I do believe that the FBI has a period of time to try to determine what threats are there today. We don't know if there's other devices. We don't know if there's other people. And I think Mirandizing them up front would be a horrible idea. Now, it's my understanding that that's not going to happen. I've had good conversations with the FBI. They're going to do their due diligence on the public safety portion. Here's where the problem is. They're getting pressure from outside groups to actually do the Mirandizing, which is why we ought to let the FBI do their work. Mm-hmm. They can do an intelligence-based investigation leading up. And remember, Mirandizing is just about making sure that any of that information that they get prior to that Mirandizing that the subject might give them can't be used in court. I think I could make this case without a confession from this guy. There is a period of time we don't need his confession up front. We need the information that he has to make sure that America is safe. Now, if we let the FBI do that the way I think they want to do it, that would be the right solution here, and it would be prudent for the safety of Bostonians and around the rest of the country. There's a lot we need to understand about the lone wolf sent back, or were there others sent back? That much we just don't know yet.
Can I pull this conversation out a little bit to talk about, as I framed at the beginning, did this change something? Does it change how we think about securing America? Mike Chertoff, former Secretary of Homeland Security, we go through the realities. I've talked to you over the years. This is something that people in your line of work have been expecting for a long time after 9/11. And look at what our recent history shows us. We've prepared this graphically about plots that have not succeeded or somehow